Ooh, Silverstone. Hello! Back with another track guide for the newly released Silverstone on Le Mans Ultimate. I'm going to be doing this in the newly released LMP3 car. Never driven an LMP3 before, in real life obviously not, and nor in sim, so thought I'd give it a whirl. The new LMP2 is really good fun, but the LMP3 is quite tricky. The tyre model is very similar to the GT3s, so it tends to snap and break away on you very, very quickly. Quite difficult to drive, so hopefully there'll be some useful hints and tips in here for people that are perhaps new to Silverstone or new to the game, so please enjoy, and thank you for watching. Okay, first thing to point out is this enormous bloody A-pillar here, which gets in the way of pretty much every view through any right-hand corner. I've moved my view a bit further forward than I would normally have it to try and circumvent it as best I can. This is a clockwise track, so most of the corners go to the right, and as I prattle on about every time, a key to going reasonably quickly is to look through the corner, and that's very difficult to do when you can't see for this enormous bloody thing. So moving the view forward has helped a little bit for me, but you do you, and set it up as best you can so that your view is as good as possible. If you were using something like bonnet cam, that would eliminate this problem, but that's cheating. So right, so pit straight, coming up towards Cops. Get the car over to the left with the left-hand tyres on the black and white curb. There's no 100-metre boards, 50-metre boards anywhere on this track anymore for some reason, so references are quite difficult to find, I think. But for this one, Cops, that final Goodyear sign seems to work reasonably well. Now you'll be in 5th gear here in this LMP3 car. When you brake at the Goodyear sign, if I try and go down to 4th, sometimes I'm going a little bit too quickly and that shift protection kicks in, which is extremely annoying. So I think for me it works better to just leave it in 5th gear. So like I say, approaching here in 5th, at the Goodyear sign, just a short sort of stab of brake, and then with a tiny little brake still on, turn into this corner. It's a very, very fast corner this. Try and get your right hand tyres onto the black and white curb. If you can, don't go too far over onto the red, because that does tend to bounce the car a little bit. It's not the end of the world if it happens. It's not too severe a bounce, but it is a little bit off-putting. Main thing is to time your acceleration point so that you don't go too wide on the exit here, because if you put your right-hand tyres beyond this white line, you will get a track cut, and that's the lap buggered before it's even begun, which is really frustrating. So you have to be very, very careful here. If you're used to ACC or something like that, which is far more lenient, this is takes a bit of adjusting to. So yeah, at this point here, right-hand tyres still on the white line, you'd be okay, but it's so easy to go just marginally beyond that, and then your lap is, as I say, ruined. So back over to the right, accelerating obviously as much as you can. This left-hand kink, completely flat, but do try to cut it as much as you can. Get your left-hand tyres as close to that red sausage as you possibly can. Again, don't go onto it because it will bounce the car a little bit, but about this point here. And then, without changing down a gear, staying in 5th, I believe it is, just a touch of brake and turn into this corner here. Again, I don't know if that was clear then, but there's the little red bits and the inside of the black and white curb are quite bouncy, so try and avoid those if you can. Just use the black and white curb. Yeah, I'm in the wrong gear. So yeah, like I say, just a slight touch of brake and a lift. Cross here. Back on the power briefly, and then back on the brakes, down to 4th gear. I can't do this course because shift protection won't let me do any of this stuff, as is always the case. Down to 4th gear, slight trail on the brake. You can use these red bits here. I think they're slightly less pronounced, so they do kind of upset the car a little bit, but not too much. It's perfectly doable. Just make sure that you stay within the white line, otherwise you'll get a track cut. Back on the power briefly, and then brake again, down to 3rd gear. Turn in. Now this is another one where this stupid pillar completely blocks your view, so just you can just see the inside curb here, but it's not easy. It makes it quite difficult not being able to see properly where you're going. Try and cut across this as much as you can. Then on the power, the downforce works really well coming out of this corner once your tyres have warmed up, so you can go full power and it kind of just sticks like glue. You should be able to get on the power quite early there, just full throttle, and then drift out to about this point. So your left-hand tyres are on the green sort of AstroTurf, and your right-hand tyres are still on the grey inside the white line. Full power obviously down here. Just keep the steering as straight as you possibly can to let the car drift out a little bit. Down towards Stowe, I think. And the braking point here, for me at least, is just as the sand begins on the left. There's kind of a grey line at the edge of the track where the grass stops, and you've just got sort of a grey strip before the curb. Just as you go into that grey strip, as in now, is where I start to brake. You could possibly push it a little bit later, but that's kind of a safe point to start braking. Down to third gear. Be very patient because, again, it's difficult to see the apex that you're aiming for. It's just a case of driving round, and through experience, you'll kind of start to instinctively turn in at the right point. Try and get your right-hand tyres to... One thing I have noticed is that the apexes are all kind of marked out for you now with these little red bits, which does help to an extent. So once you reach the apex where these three red sections are, you can get back on the power there. Keep the steering lock on though, because it's very, very tempting to sort of run out wider than you really should. And then once again, you go beyond the white line and you've got another track cut. So drift out to about this point here. No further. Again, left tyres on the AstroTurf, right tyres on the white line. Back over to the right. And you're starting to brake just before the curb begins here. So kind of where I am now, I would say. Hard on the brakes, full... Well, not full brakes because there's no ABS in this, but quite a heavy braking zone this is. I go down to second gear. Well, let me go into second now. To start to trail off the brake and turn in. You can just clip this red curb slightly, but not too much because again you will get a track cut. A little burst of power in between the two, and then trail brake turn in here. Now you're trying to get as close to this inside red sausage curb as you possibly can. It's difficult to do because again you can't properly see it. So just aim as best you can while you've got vision of it. As soon as you've gone round, start to feed the power back in. Now with these slower corners, if you're in second gear, is what I'm doing. Oh, bloody shift protection, so annoying. If you're too sudden with the power, they spin. I think they use this a very similar tyre model, if not the same tyre model as the GT3s. So when they go, they go. And there's not a great deal of warning. And it tends to happen if you just go full throttle at low speed in first or second gear. If you use the little trick of kind of 25-30% throttle just for a fraction of a second and then up to full power, that seems to help to stabilize the back of the car before you put the rest of the power down. But just be very wary of that because I've spun numerous times trying to get around here. It's incredibly frustrating. At high speed, the downforce works and they're quite stable, but at low speeds, it's very, very easy to get the back to just whiz around on you. So try and feed the power in, like I say, smoothly or progressively. Drift out to here. Again, you can't see. It's just completely blind where you're trying to go now. So it's a case of just relying on the fact you have got lots of downforce. This section is flat. So once you've gotten to full power, keep full power down. Just try and keep looking out for that little red curb. That's your... the apex of the second section, but it's all easily flat out in these cars. And again, try and straighten the steering and drift out a little bit onto the curb here if it helps you. Full power down to here. I think you'll get up to fifth gear. As you approach this right hand kink, you let the car go drift onto the left hand curb here, so your left tires are on the black and white. Stay in fifth gear, just a dab of brake and then kind of a bit of a flicking motion. So off the accelerator, dab of brake, turn. You can cut across this quite aggressively. As soon as you've gone over the kind of rough rumble and tumble of the curb, you go back on full power immediately. And it should, with the downforce, stick. And then this section is flat. As you're going through this left-hand kink, try and stay to as far to the left as you can. Use all of this curb on the left because the next right-hand corner is coming up and you want to be on the left for braking. And if you drift too far to the right, there's not a lot of time to get back over to the left, if that makes sense. So yeah, through here, staying as far to the left as you can. As soon as the curb on the right here ends, as in this curb here, stops, that's where I start to brake for the right-hander. If you brake where the curb on the left begins, I find that's a little bit too late. So my point is where that sort of the curb narrows and disappears, that's the braking point. Make sure that before you start to brake, the car is pointing to the left so you can brake in as straight a line as possible. And go down to second gear. Again, you can't see the apex, so you just have to hope for the best and use experience to find a good turning point. Hopefully you'll get to this sort of point here. You can cut this quite a lot. There's a little bit of the red bits isn't too aggressive, so you can drive over that if need be. Excuse me, in second gear, not first. Again, this is another point where it's really easy for the back to go when you try and accelerate between these two corners. It just suddenly breaks away on you. So try and use the 35, 40%, and then on to full power, or just very, very smoothly apply the power. I stay in second gear for all of this. Traditionally, this is a first gear corner coming up, but second seems fine to me in these. I think they've got quite a lot of low down torque. So get yourself as far over to the right as you can. One good thing about this pillar being here is that you've got good vision for this corner, because this was always really difficult to see in ACC. So trail brake into this. Try and get the car in so the left-hand tyres get onto the black and white curb, and then as soon as you can start to accelerate out. Make sure as you're accelerating you're taking the steering lock off. The two need to kind of work together, because you really need to get as good an exit as possible here, because you've got a big long flat out section now, but you're still susceptible to that sudden rotation from the car just snapping on you. So bit of practice, bit of familiarity with how the car sort of reacts to things, and get on the power as smoothly and quickly and early as you possibly can. And this section is flat. I would avoid cutting this too much, because for some reason, in every other iteration of Silverstone I've done, you can cut this an awful lot, but if you cut this in this particular car, it bounces it around quite a lot, and it's easily flat, so there's no real need to cut it too much. So just use the black and white curb, stay off the red bit there. Make sure you don't have a little lapse in concentration and drift out too wide here, because again you can get a track cut very, very easily. All the way down here, staying over to the right. Now the braking point for me is round about where that white line is on the red guardrail on the right, or the white line on the red guardrail, yeah. When you get to about there, it's this point here, shift down to third gear. Stay kind of out to the right a little bit later than you probably think you should, because if you turn in too early here, you'll run out of road on the exit. But quite a late turn, and again, you've got the conveniently labelled red apex, so you can just aim for that. Start to turn in about this point here, but avoid actually driving over the red raised bits of curb, because again they're quite aggressive and they will bounce you off more than you would really ideally like. So just use the black and white curb, stay off the red. Start to feed the power back in, right the way over to the right, get the car straight, and then immediately down to second gear on the brakes. And then again, you can't see a bloody thing here. So you're just hoping that you can adjust the line of the car, if you can, until you can just about see the white line visible there. Now, when the way I normally have my view set up, that was just impossible to do. This is why I've moved the view forward, because it is just about possible to see certain key things to help you navigate your way around. There's two potential lines here. You can go out and then come back in for a late apex. I just tend to hug the inside, really. Hug the inside curb all the way around, because it's very, very long corner, this love bit, I think it is. So as soon as you're getting to this sort of point here and that exit curb starts to become visible, you can start to accelerate out. Use quite a lot of exit curbs, so your left-hand tyres go onto the AstroTurf, and that is that. So as always, I'll go around a little bit quicker. My tyres will be stone cold, so apologies in advance if I make a pig's ear of this.
Lap 16, 10.70.
Fifth gear, left-hand tyres on the curb, brake at the Goodyear sign. Drift out as wide as I dare. Back over to the right. Cut across this next to the red curb. Grab a brake, turn in, back on the power. Brake down to fourth. Accelerate down to third now. On the power quite early. I think a warning thing appeared just for a second then, but got away with that one, so I think that was okay. We do get up to 6 here. Oh. That stayed okay there, so just before the curb. Oh, locked up a little bit there, so my tyres are very cold. Can't see where I'm going. There it is. Whiff. Over to the left. Grab a brake. Turning back on the power immediately. Use the left-hand curb. And brake when that curb ends. There we go. Don't use the red there. Takes some concentration, this does. Just do that white line. Oh no. I'm locked up slightly there, I'm afraid. Just because the tyres are a little bit cold, I think. There we go. I hope that's helpful. Only was released today, so a little bit premature perhaps. I put a slightly quicker lap on. I'm still learning myself, but I think it's a reasonably competitive lap time. Looking at the online leaderboards, so yeah, I hope there's something useful in there for people. Thank you very much for watching, and see you next time. Ta-ta.
Time 154.53.